Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Nix, and welcome back to NASCAR Mailbox. We just wrapped up a pretty interesting race at Talladega Superspeedway, where Austin Cindric defeated Ryan Preece in a photo finish. Fuel saving was the name of the game during the Cup race, and the racing quality came into question for much of the event. With that said, I have selected one question today that is actually not centered around the poor racing quality that we saw this past week at Talladega. Instead, it is with the man who finished originally third but moved up to second, Kyle Larson. And this question is from Jeremy Jackson L2V. He said, as these races go on, do you think Kyle Larson is getting better at Daytona and Talladega? And I think so. I think so. I first want to talk about luck. Kyle Larson, when he first came up, was very, very unlucky at Daytona and Talladega. I think back to a few years ago where he immediately blew up. I'm not sure if it was the Talladega race. I'm not sure if it was spring Talladega last year or like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. But there was one race at Talladega where he blew up like 5 laps into the race and finished last. And that's happened to him on multiple occasions where he's blown up. He's been caught up at other people's mistakes. He's been caught up at other people's wrecks. So I think he was just very, very unlucky for the first several years of his career at super speedways. Obviously, it's not just luck. I think my guess or opinion as to why these types of tracks were the weakest for him was because Larson is at his best when he pushes his car to the limit. He's at his best when he leaves everything on the line. More often than not, it is more difficult. I shouldn't say more difficult. More often than not, it's so much different to do that at a super speedway than you can at like a short track or an intermediate or even a road course. Your fate is in the hands of other drivers, not just your own at super speedways. So he might put himself in a good position, but what happens if it's at the expense of another driver? What happens if he takes someone else out of the race as a result of his own over aggressiveness, over exuberance? And when you're racing one guy, it's a lot easier to see. I feel like for Larson, it's a lot easier to see, okay, my limit is here. How hard can I push the car to get around this guy in the next corner? But at a super speedway, you have 25, 30 cars all around you. So if you make one wrong move, you're wrecking half the field. So I just think Larson didn't really know how to get to the very limit of his performance. It's a lot different on a super speedway because you have fates of other drivers in your hands as well. And the opposite is also true. Your fate is in their hands. So because Larson can't fully control the limit of his performance at Daytona and Talladega, which is probably often why he got caught up in other people's mistakes, other people's messes. Because he's raced at, like, for example, like he's raced at short tracks so much that he knows exactly how far to push his car to get the guy ahead of him to make a mistake. He can't do that at a super speedway. I'm not saying nobody, unless you're like Dale Jr., Dale Sr., or I guess nowadays Austin Hill, you can't do that. You can't force the guy ahead of you into a mistake at the super speedway. It's such a different brand of racing than the rest of the tracks and the rest of the types of tracks that NASCAR goes to. So I think it was a combination of very bad luck and Larson just not quite clicking at these tracks, just not quite getting to where he needs to be. So to answer your question, I think he's gotten a lot smarter about where to place his car. From my point of view, he's not as aggressive as he used to be on these types of tracks. He's a lot, which is very unlike Kyle Larson. But for me, it seems like he's a lot more conservative at these tracks. He doesn't try to do too much. And especially in this era of, I don't want to say just like slam drafting, but in this era of like 2x2 slot car super speedway racing, you have to be a lot more particular with the moves that you make. Because one bad mistake, if you get knocked out of line, you were going directly to the back. So I think Larson, he's racing a lot smarter at these types of tracks than he used to. And I know you didn't mention Atlanta either, but he almost very nearly won Atlanta as well. And I still remember that battle with Byron and Cindric at the end. That makes a big difference, honestly. That makes a really big difference. Now, Larson definitely, he was definitely, I want to say aggressive, but he never stepped over the line and didn't really come close to stepping over the line either in the race in Atlanta earlier this year. So I think he's raced, my personal opinion, I think he's racing a little more conservatively. He's being smarter on what runs to take, what runs not to take, and putting himself in the best position to win. So it's a very un-Kyle Larson-like strategy, but that's my view on how it's been working out for him a lot better at these types of tracks. Because I've definitely seen his, I agree with you, I've seen his performance pick up, his performance has improved, and this was really his biggest weakness as a driver is super speedways, where other drivers you would think would almost be the opposite, like they're really good at super speedways, not great at much anything else. But they've always been his kryptonite. But I don't want to say he's amazing at them, but he's started to get a lot better. He's definitely starting to figure them out and putting himself in position to get solid runs. He's not trying to do too much. He's not trying to win the race on lap two. So it's very different from how he typically drives, but in my view, that is how it's working out for him. It's working out for him very, very well, especially lately. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's edition of NASCAR Mailbox. We are headed to the Lone Star State at Texas Motor Speedway this weekend for a triple header, Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. So I hope everyone enjoys the races this weekend. Bye-bye.
Steven Stump of Frontstretch.com here. Come back for more great racing videos, and if you like us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.